Hello, I'm Stephen Mangan. Welcome to The Confessional, the show that looks for the worst in its guests. Most celebrity interviews want them to show off, talk about their achievements. This show is the opposite of that. We're not interested in what they're proud of. We want to hear about what they're ashamed of. Now, it's a brave person who signs up to be the first ever guest on a show with a brief like this. So who have we got? Well, my guest tonight is an immensely accomplished and versatile actor, both on stage and screen. He recently portrayed the serial killer Dennis Nielsen for the ITV drama Des, and even more sinisterly, his character Wilf tried to kill my Postman Pat in Postman Pat the movie. This is clearly a man in touch with his dark side. But he is probably still best known for Doctor Who, in which he played the title character. If you haven't worked out who it is by now, I fear the next 20 minutes will be baffling to you. Welcome to The Confessional, David Tennant.
Hello, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Are you well?
I'm well. I'm not without anxiety about this.
Well, okay. Have you been to confession before?
Never, no. I'm a Church of Scotland Protestant. We don't have such things.
Oh, don't you? So how do you get rid of your sins?
Well, you don't really. You just carry them around and they weigh you down gradually through life. It's all about suffering, being a Church of Scotland Protestant.
So
and being aware that you're not worthy.
You're not worthy. Oh, I see. Because you're just the accumulated baggage of all those sins.
Yes, you are scum. You are filth, and God knows that, and you know that. And as long as everyone's on the same page, then we all just scrabble along together.
So are you a guilty person? Do you feel guilt?
Oh yes, guilt and anxiety.
It was such a world-weary way you said that.
Yeah, well, it's a constant engine.
Now I've no idea what your confessions are. I haven't seen them.
You don't,
right.
So
I've had fun guessing. I mean,
it's an interesting thing to do because, of course, one has to acknowledge that this is in some way a public forum. So it does limit the things that you can actually admit and confess to.
Yes,
just because legality or if actual real people are involved, one has to be slightly circumspect.
Yeah, and so you are a fundamentally decent person, but also is there a burden to being a fundamentally decent person in that you don't want to let people down by suddenly revealing that you've done something really awful?
You see, I don't have that sense of myself. But yes, you don't want to reveal to the world a kind of dark underbelly.
But but you do that in your work. I mean, you just played famously Des Nielsen in Des.
Yes. I suppose, but one is not professing to mirror his deeds in my own life.
But do you get to be horrible and chop people up and bury them in your garden at work, and therefore is that a sort of confession? Is that an unburdening of your dark side?
That's a very interesting question. I played a villain in a Marvel TV show. Things like that. There's something terribly liberating about getting just to be bad. You get to see what it might feel like to murder people or to do awful things to people, safe in the knowledge that you're not actually doing that. There is something about an actor's life there that's quite freeing. There's a catharsis.
Yeah, you're a tourist, aren't you? In
very good
people's darkness.
Exactly. Yes.
I mean, Des got a lot of complaints, didn't it, about the smoking? I think
that's what people focused on. Yes.
I mean, at the time he was doing his stuff, I think people were more bothered about the murders. But I think if you started murdering someone now, people would say, "Could you do that outside, please?"
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, in the original idea for the show, the idea was that me and the guest would be locked together in an actual confessional box.
I see.
Like the ones I remember from my sainted childhood. But obviously, with COVID restrictions and stuff, we've sort of constructed our own confessional box of the mind, I suppose. So, what sort of box would you be comfortable in? If you had to, an imaginary box, are you a sort of polished mahogany and gold inlay kind of guy? Or I
imagine I'd like it to be comfortable. I'd like it to be welcome. I'd like snacks. And I think I'd like the person I'm confessing to be mute.
Ah, right.
I'd like them to be mute, but I suppose I'm looking for something with a kind of maternal forgiveness. A mute Margaret Rutherford, I suppose, is what I'm looking for, who would welcome me into her ample bosom and tell me that it's all okay.
Okay.
But without saying anything. I don't want to be judged.
Right.
I don't want to be judged. I want to unburden myself, have a nice snuggle in Margaret Rutherford's ample bosom, and be on my way with some snacks in my pocket.
You've come to the right place.
Thank goodness for that.
I mean, with that image in mind, I think we're ready. So, David, please, can I hear your first confession?
It's about the first time I actively remember encountering shame. It was my first school, the run-up to my first school nativity play. Mm-hmm. So I was 5 years old, and this would have been in Paisley in the west of Scotland. And because cultural appropriation wasn't a thing yet, of course, that would mean every small child bringing in a tea towel to put on their head to be part of the nativity play.
Yeah.
We were in the classroom, so we weren't, I don't think we were rehearsing the play. I think we were just maybe going through what we were all going to wear. Anyway, I had my requisite tea towel with a bit of string to tie it around your head. And I somehow ended up standing at my desk with the class all watching me trying to put my tea towel on my head, failing miserably to attach it in any way, and everyone finding that very funny. And rather than being appalled that I was being laughed at, in that moment, and perhaps this says a lot about where my life went, I kind of went, oh, this is getting quite a nice reaction. So I then rearranged the tea towel in another malfunctioning way on my head, to more gales of laughter from the classroom, at which point it then became a thing. So I would then go from one version to another, each time being, more scrappy, more ludicrous with what I did with this tea towel. And every time the laughter grew, the audience I had them in the palm of my hand, Stephen.
Yep.
This was an exciting moment, because clearly something in me was responding to this and not wanting to let it go. So I just kept at it. Now, there's probably a limit to the number of things you can really do with a tea towel on your head. And I suspect quite quickly I was repeating them. But my 5-year-old audience, they didn't have a problem with that. It kept being funny to them. And even though in that moment I'm standing in that class, I'm sort of aware that I've run out of material, I keep going. And it doesn't, the reaction I get does not seem to wane. The class are loving it more and more and more. It becomes uproarious. And then what happened to the teacher, who, as memory serves, was simply sitting at her desk marking books or something, just very dryly and rather quietly said, my real name is David John MacDonald, very dryly just went, David John MacDonald, sit down and stop showing off.
Oh.
At which point, silence descended on the class, but more importantly, a coldness descended on my soul.
Yeah.
The idea that she cut me down in the flight of my glory. It makes perfect sense to me. I get the culture where a teacher is going. He's making everybody laugh. He's entertaining everyone. He's taking the spotlight. All the things which are wrong and bad. It's that who do you think you are thing. How dare you imagine that you are worthy of people's attention?
And not just that, but how dare you enjoy it? I mean, being worthy of it.
Exactly.
Because I think one of the great things about you as an actor is that, and I think things people respond to, is that you clearly relish doing it. You enjoy it, and it's infectious, and it's part of the charisma and the joy and all the rest of it. So to be told...
well, it's interesting. As you say that, I am both thrilled that you feel that way and also a little bit ashamed. Because it's still in there.
What was she like as a teacher?
She was quite strict, yeah.
I mean, was your spontaneous joy throwing a sort of unwelcome light on the barren spot where her soul used to be, or...
Let's say yes. Because that will make me feel better.
Or was she a really nice person just having a bad moment? I mean,
she was quite harsh.
Right. I mean, you and I have several kids between us.
Yeah.
And I don't mean you and I have children together. I mean, Louise and Georgia.
Although that would be lovely.
Certainly did.
And let's look into that.
Yeah. But I mean, we know that every so often, on incredibly rare occasions, children can try your patience.
Occasionally. Yes.
So maybe she was just
it took me a long time to really process what had happened at all. And also at 5, you're not even capable of quite unpacking that. It's taken me a lifetime. But in that moment, she really did me quite a lot of damage, I think. It really lived with me.
So that imposter syndrome, is that still there?
Oh, my goodness. Of course it is.
Do you still get that little voice, David Tennant, you are not Dennis Nilsson, you are not a serial killer, sit down and stop being so silly?
I do, I think. I think it's always there. It's turned into a self-monitoring that's in my head, always sort of saying, sit down and stop showing off. And again, it's a battle with using that when it's useful, because sometimes, you need to know when to exit the stage, don't you? You need to know when the material has run out.
Yeah.
But you don't want to leave the stage when the audience are still laughing, do you?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. How can you do that?
I mean, just to get on the stage in the first place is hard enough. And then to be in that, performance ecstasy where you and them are one, and every little movement you make is sending them into spasms of laughter. That's not the moment to wrap everything up. Not the moment really at all.
No.
Oh dear, oh dear. Well, thank you. That's a fantastic first confession. Thank you so much. I mean, that feeling of nagging doubt. I think a penance to do with nagging doubt. Perhaps you have to. I tell you what your penance is. You have to swim across the channel, and then halfway across, you have to remember you've left your front door unlocked and swim back.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah, sorry about that, but no one said it would be easy. So, David, I think we should move on to your second confession.
My second confession is called Melissa von Stressel.
Right, what?
Melissa von Stressel.
Okay.
There may be somebody called Melissa von Stressel somewhere in the world, but I created Melissa von Stressel.
Right.
Because for several years, I felt the need to have a PA, but I didn't have a PA. So I made one up, got myself an email address, and it was really just as a buffer, as a way of having awkward conversations that I didn't want to have.
Right.
Because, it didn't seem implausible that somebody who's on the telly a bit might have a PA. Now,
Sure.
I didn't. But Melissa von Stressel took some of the stress. The clue was in the name.
So what did you make her do?
She only existed digitally. She was an email address. That's what Melissa was. And it was a way of communicating with people who were asking me to do things I didn't want to do. All the kind of the do's that people want you to go to, or the speeches people wanted you to make, or I can't even think, all the things that you don't really have an excuse not to do.
But what stopped you just saying, no, sorry, I'm not going to do that?
Because again, it's that, who do you think you are? How dare you not? You've been gifted all this wonderful life, which, of course, I have a terribly privileged life and situation that I live within, but and therefore that sense that, well, therefore you should spend every waking minute opening fates and writing forewords to books and giving 10-minute inspirational talks. The 10-minute inspirational talk is just not I don't know where to begin. I do not know where to begin. And yet, once you've been on the telly a bit, people assume you hold the keys to the mysteries of life. Why? I just pretend to be other people on the television. Why does that legitimize my opinions in any sense? Why should I have the answer to any mysteries of life? Because I spend my life pretending to be other people. I mean, it would seem quite the opposite if I'm running away into fiction in that way in my professional life, that I should have anything to share. So things like that I felt embarrassed by, or certainly but I just didn't quite know how to say no. Melissa took the strain. And this was fine if you could. It worked. It worked as a sort of instant rebuff.
Right.
If you got an email, if somebody asked you to do something, Melissa answered, unfortunately, Mr. Tennant is unavailable for whatever reason, and they went away. Done. Job done. Melissa didn't have to get involved.
He's touring his one-man tea towel show. You can't open your fate.
Exactly, because that's running and running. Now he's finally got over himself. Most people just took it and went away. The issue would come if people started a dialogue with Melissa.
Right. Or wanted to speak to her on the phone.
Oh, well, she was never available on the phone, unfortunately. We never quite got to that. There was one point where there was conversation of me enlisting someone to be Melissa. And we got into a sort of rehearsal of how a phone call was going to go. That was the point where I realized Melissa just didn't work out. I'm not a good enough liar, unfortunately. I'm not comfortable enough with that kind of subterfuge that when Melissa got too involved, by the time an email chain got 3 or 4 emails long, I started to panic.
Right, okay.
Because then you're in too deep.
I mean, it's like a sitcom episode, I have to say. You know, the boss is coming round, I've pretended. I have a PA. Can you please? Oh, wow. I mean, I have to say, it's a really interesting one because, sometimes a tiny lie can snowball into something much bigger and get out of hand. But I have to say the entry level on this particular one is quite dishonest straight off the bat. Because you're not saying, oh, no, you look great in pink. I mean, you're saying, hello, I'm Melissa. Okay, via email, but you're straight in there.
No, it's not great. I mean, I'm not proud of this, but it does come from a place of not wanting to offend, I think. I mean, the end result is the same. I'm still saying I don't want to do that or go away, but I suppose it's cowardice. It's cowardice, isn't it? Is
it that you don't want people to be upset with you?
Yes, of course. I want them to be upset with Melissa von Stressel. I mean, there was certainly a sense that if you're going to do it, have a Christian name that any PA might well have. Lots of PAs are called Melissa, I presume.
Good, okay. Von Stressel is flirting with disaster, I would suggest.
I'm asking to be caught, aren't I?
You're saying it's, is that so that when you were caught, if ever you were caught, you could say, well, clearly maybe Melissa von PA.
Course. How can you not have known that this was all a wind-up? Maybe.
Did she have a character of her own? Did she answer emails in a certain way that was very unlike you?
She was quite flinty, I think.
Did you bitch about her behind her back?
I think she would slightly roll her eyes about me. I think that was the other thing. I allowed myself to become the kind of... Melissa would go, oh... Obviously, she was terribly professional and she wouldn't slag her boss off, but she would let the person she was communicating with know that she didn't really approve.
Right.
That really he could be doing a bit better than he's doing.
He's very disorganized. And
he's very he's disorganized and he's a little bit... Right. He lacks moral fibre at the end of the day because he should be owning your fate. He should be doing that. And it's a bit of a disgrace that he's not. However, I'm here to tell you that it's not going to happen. So sorry. There was one situation where somebody was so persistent with Melissa, and they were terribly civilized with her. They had a lovely relationship, and they were so persistent. In the end, I gave in and did this particular thing. I did end up going to it, and then, of course, having to have conversations with this person about how lovely Melissa was and how helpful she'd been.
And how did you feel during that? I mean, were you deep in character? I mean, at that point, did you almost believe she lived? And were like,
no, that just gave me a sort of cold sweat because I felt absolutely caught in my lie. I think that was the beginning of the end for Melissa. I couldn't do it.
Oh my word!
I mean, just get a PA. That's the moral of that story, isn't it?
Get a PA, yeah. I mean, there really is.
I hope nobody's listening to this who's got an email from Melissa von Stressel.
There will inevitably be somebody whose fate ribbon is still intact and the scissors waiting.
Why is Melissa not getting back to me?
So I have to think of a penance now.
Okay.
You clearly do have some skill for dishonesty and deception, I think we could safely say.
Not enough, it turned out.
Not enough. So let me see. If you, penance, you could write... How about you write a positive review for the film Cats?
Does that mean I have to watch it?
Yeah.
That is tough.
Yeah. Watch it.
I've heard. It might be brilliant.
It might be. I haven't seen it either. But,
no.
The word on the street, the word down the alley.
From people who were in it is not good.
Yeah. Can we please now hear your third and final confession?
This is one that it's a sort of tendency I have, and there are a couple of very specific times when it's happened, but it's something I do, and perhaps you can help me figure out why. But it's, well, for instance, one instance, and this is tricky because I can't use real names, but there's an actor that I have great respect for, who I'm a big fan of.
Is it me?
He does lots of very high-end work, lots of very credible theatre, lots of extraordinary work in film. He also happens to be involved in one of the big franchises. He has a running part in one of them. Anyway, I was at a party that this actor was also at, and there's me thinking, oh, we sort of know each other. We know we're mates. And in an effort, I think it comes from a place of wanting to accelerate that friendship to a level of familiarity where you can have a sort of bants with someone, but before I've earned it. It's like I'm trying to manufacture a sort of
intimacy,
best friendship with someone because I think they're cool. So as we talked about, an episode of this particular franchise had just been out, and I was talking about how exciting it was and how thrilling that he was in it and how wonderful. And then in that weird way of accelerating it beyond to a point where we're just the sort of people that we sort of take the piss out of each other, I start saying, yeah, but I mean, it's a lot of old nonsense, isn't it? What a lot of old nonsense it is. Just ludicrous. And as it's coming out of my mouth, I'm thinking, I don't even think this. I love these movies. I think they're properly brilliant. I think this person is brilliant in them. And yet, here I am, sharing this time with this person, sort of slagging off his work. Why am I doing this? Now, because he's an utter gentleman, just sort of smiled benignly and went, well, I suppose, kind of, but, didn't want to belittle the movie that he was involved in and didn't want to, but neither did he want to make it embarrassing for me. Right. I was doing that all by myself. Because in that moment, I'm sort of giddy with it. I'm not really even thinking about what I'm doing. In that moment, I'm going, yeah, here we are, having a chat, just, slagging off his film franchise. Look at us. Look how what great mates we are. It's only as we moved away that my wife, Georgia, went, what were you doing? What was that about? And then I'm thinking, I don't know what that was about. I don't understand why I had to do that. Why do I have to set fire to this perfectly lovely conversation? Because I'm trying to, get an intimacy, manufacture an intimacy with this person? And why would slagging off this enormous film franchise that has been hugely beneficial to his life and career, why would that in any way endear him to me? Only the other day I did it again. I was on set and we had this guest star coming in, this new actor coming to join us, just for a small but significant role. Quite a big deal actor coming to do this part. And we got on like a house on fire and it was lovely. And we spent a couple of days on set together. And this actor very kindly brought up a play they'd seen me in many, many years before. And again, they were being terribly nice. They were being very nice about something they'd seen me in. There was no reason to say anything other than thanks very much, how kind. But no, I had to go, yeah, but written by insert author's name here. He's a bit of an arse, isn't he? And you could see, as I said this, they were, again, assuming the kind of, I don't want to offend here, but neither can I go along with this conversation because, as it turned out, this particular author was their godfather. So in that moment,
do you feel that way about this?
I don't feel that way. I was talking about a really good play by one of the greatest authors of the 20th and 21st century. Why did I feel the need to say that? It wasn't true. I didn't believe it. It was entirely unnecessary. I think it's trying to be one of the cool kids. I think that's what it is. It's a sense that I don't really have the right to be here talking about this amazing author who I happen to have worked for and with. How lucky am I? So wrong is it that I should be in this frame at all, that I must kind of piss on it. That I must
imposter syndrome again.
It is. It's the same thing, isn't it?
And nerves and just the nervousness around it. I think that's a very common thing, though. I think people might not react in that particular way, but I mean, I have a problem where I tend to ignore the important and famous people that I admire in a room, just because I don't know why, actually. Whether I don't want to come across as a toady or a sort of
Yes, well, that's just you being polite, though.
But no, but even in a small room, if there's 6 people and one person I hugely admire, I will probably talk to the other 5 at great length and completely ignore the important person. It's a sort of reverse working the room.
Is that, do you think, because you're nervous that were you to engage with him, you might end up doing something like I've just been describing, that you get it so wrong?
I mean, I have done that. I went to a film premiere in New York. I happened to be there doing something. I got invited to this do. I had nothing to do with the movie at all. Robert De Niro was there. Huge fan. I mean, you know, who isn't? Amazing actor. And for once I thought, you are not going to do your normal thing of just ignoring people. You're going to go up and you're going to introduce yourself and you're going to say how much you like his stuff. So I sort of wound myself up into a fizzing ball of tension.
Yes.
And I walked up to him and I said, "Hello, I'm Robert De Niro." And he said, "No, I'm Robert De Niro." And I said, yes, you are. And then I left. And that was because I think that's the sort of thing I'll end up doing.
Right.
I mean,
then you're probably wise to ignore them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got to think of a penance for you now.
Okay.
I think I'm worried about this imposter syndrome. I think this is what I want you to do is
a theme, isn't it?
Every time from now on you're on any sort of red carpet being interviewed, I want you to look straight down the lens of the camera and say, "I'm David Tennant and I deserve to be here."
Actually, that makes my bum go a bit funny. I don't think I'll be able to do that.
Do it once. Can you do it once, do you think? I have every right to be... I have as much right, and point to the person to your left being interviewed, as much right as them to be here.
Well, what? That's Robert De Niro. Oh, I mean, I'll try. I'll give it my best shot.
Listen, it's a messy business, this. You know,
oh, it really
is. We're turning over the darkest, embarrassments. Yeah. Well, David, thank you so much for letting us hear your confession.
It's sort of been a pleasure.
This is Stephen Mangan from The Confessional saying, until next time, be good or be bad, and then make it all better by telling a stranger about it. This was a 7 Digital production for BBC Radio 4, with, we confess, some extra jokes by Nick Doody, and production by Dave Anderson and Frank Sterling.